Who got you this wristwatch? The jealous Korean mafia boss loses control over his black secretary. Who got you that wristwatch? Hyun-woo asked, his voice silk over steel as he stepped closer to where I stood beneath the gallery lights, his eyes fixed on my wrist like it had personally betrayed him. And I realized Seoul's most feared mafia boss wasn't asking out of idle curiosity. The way his fingers flexed at his sides, that dangerous tell I'd learned to recognize, told me the man who controlled entire districts was about to lose control over a piece of silver meant for someone else. And there you have it, loves, another forbidden romance that began with jealousy and ended with a man willing to burn the world down for the woman he couldn't afford to want. If you're obsessed with powerful men unraveling, secretaries who refuse to be owned, and love stories as dangerous as they are inevitable, you're exactly where you need to be. Hit that subscribe button because we've got more tension-filled romances heading your way, mafia bosses, forbidden desire, all the emotional chaos you crave. Smash that like button and drop a comment telling me what you're doing right now and where in the world you're tuning in from. Are you commuting through your city, working late at your desk, or listening in bed while the world sleeps? I love knowing where my romance addicts are falling in love with these stories. Dahlia was adjusting the sleeve of her soft green dress when she felt his gaze lock onto her wrist. The watch was simple, silver, understated, the kind of elegant timepiece that spoke of thoughtfulness rather than impulse. It had arrived in her life quietly, a gift from someone who knew her before soul, before power, before danger became her daily currency. She'd worn it without thinking, out of habit and comfort. Maybe that was the mistake. They were standing in the private viewing hall of the Baekseong Art Gallery, surrounded by abstract canvases worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Investors murmured in hushed tones. Crystal glasses caught the light. Seoul's elite pretended not to notice the man everyone knew controlled far more than the real estate empire his business cards claimed. Dahlia had survived 3 years as Hyun-woo's executive secretary by mastering the art of invisibility when it mattered and precision when it didn't. She'd learned to read the shifts in his expression the way sailors read approaching storms. But she hadn't expected this storm. She felt his presence before she heard him, the way the air seemed to change temperature when he moved into her space. When she turned, Hyun-woo was closer than professional distance allowed, his expression perfectly composed in that way that meant absolutely nothing was composed beneath it. Who got you that wristwatch? His voice was quiet. Lethally quiet. Dahlia blinked, following his gaze to her wrist. A strange chill crawled up her spine, not fear exactly, but recognition. This wasn't a casual question. Oh, this? She kept her voice light, instinctive. It's just a gift. Just a gift. Something flickered across Hyun-woo's face, there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. But she hadn't. She'd learned his tells. The slight tightening of his jaw. The way his fingers flexed once at his side before going still. A gift, he repeated, each syllable weighted with meaning she couldn't quite decode. From who? The gallery noise seemed to fade into background static. For 3 years, Dahlia had survived by understanding one fundamental rule: never confuse Hyun-woo's curiosity for casual interest. This wasn't curiosity. This was something far more dangerous. A friend, she answered carefully, measuring each word. The answer landed wrong. She saw it in the way his posture shifted, almost imperceptible to anyone else. But Dahlia had made a career of reading the invisible. Hyun-woo straightened, offering a polite nod to a passing investor, his public mask sliding perfectly into place. To anyone watching, he was the picture of corporate elegance. But Dahlia stood close enough to see the storm. Cancel my remaining appointments tonight, he said, already turning away. His tone was professional, businesslike. And reschedule tomorrow's meetings. Chairman Hyun-woo, she began. He paused, not looking back. That watch, he added, his voice dropping to something that sounded almost like regret, doesn't suit you. The words followed her long after he disappeared into the crowd, leaving her standing beneath gallery lights that suddenly felt too bright, too exposing, with a silver watch that had just become the most dangerous thing she owned. Dahlia had learned the rules early. The first week working for Hyun-woo, she'd made the mistake of asking questions. Why did the contract fall through? Who was that man in your office? Where are we going? He'd answered exactly none of them. Instead, he'd looked at her with those unreadable eyes and said, Miss Dahlia, Your job is to anticipate my needs, not interrogate my decisions. The message was clear. Curiosity was a liability. So she'd stopped asking. She'd learned to read the silence instead, the way his jaw tightened before bad news, the specific tone he used before someone disappeared from his inner circle, the particular stillness that meant violence was being calculated behind his perfect composure. Within 3 months, she'd become indispensable. Within 6, she'd realized indispensable was another word for trapped. Rule 1, never ask how Hyunwoo knew things he shouldn't. Like the time he'd known about her mother's hospital visit before Dahlia had even booked the flight home. Or when he'd casually mentioned her favorite restaurant closing, a tiny Ethiopian place in Itaewon she'd never told anyone about, and had it bought and renovated within a week. You seemed upset about it, he'd said, as if surveillance was thoughtfulness. She'd thanked him and added it to the mental list of things she pretended not to notice. Rule 2, never acknowledge the men who followed him silently. They were always there, shadows in expensive suits, ghosts with earpieces, men whose names she never learned because learning them would make everything real. They stood outside restaurants where Hyunwoo dined. They waited in parking garages. They drove cars that stayed 3 vehicles behind hers on the way home. Protection, probably. Threat, definitely. She'd learned not to make eye contact. Rule 3, never let her personal life touch his world. This was the hardest rule. The most important one. Because Seoul's elite world didn't quite know what to make of Dahlia Williams. She was American, acceptable. Educated, impressive. But black, in rooms full of old money and older prejudices, in a city that still treated foreignness like a curiosity rather than a credential. She'd felt the stares during her first corporate dinner. The way conversations paused when she entered. The subtle surprise when she spoke fluent Korean with a Seoul accent she'd perfected through sheer determination. Hyunwoo had noticed. They're intimidated, he'd said later, in the car. They're racist, she'd corrected. He'd smiled, rare, dangerous. That too. But mostly intimidated. You make them feel provincial. It was the closest he'd ever come to a compliment. After that, something shifted. Investors who dismissed her started listening. Business partners learned to go through her for access to Hyunwoo. She became the gatekeeper to Seoul's most dangerous man, and the role gave her a peculiar kind of power. But it also made her visible in ways that felt unsafe. So she'd built walls. Professional distance. Emotional armor. A life carved out in the spaces between Hyunwoo's world and her own survival. And then Ade had texted, coming to Seoul for a week. Miss your face. Ade, who'd known her at university in London. Who'd held her through homesickness and heartbreak. Who'd taught her that friendship could be family when blood relatives were an ocean away. Ade, who saw her as Dahlia, not the secretary, not the foreigner, not the careful construct she'd built to survive. The watch had been waiting at her apartment when she'd returned from work last week. Simple silver, engraved on the back, for the woman who's always on time, even when the world isn't. She'd cried. Actually cried. Because someone had seen her, really seen her, without needing anything in return. She'd worn it without thinking. Now, standing in her apartment as midnight crept toward morning, Dahlia turned the watch over in her hands. The gallery lights felt like a lifetime ago, but Hyunwoo's voice was still there. That watch doesn't suit you. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Rule 3 exists for a reason, Miss Dahlia. Her blood went cold. The watch had already changed everything. And Hyunwoo was watching. Monday arrived like winter. Hyunwoo didn't greet her when she entered his office at 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes early as always. He was already at his desk, reviewing contracts, his posture immaculate. The morning light cut sharp angles across his face. She set down his coffee, black, no sugar, precisely 82 degrees Celsius, in the exact spot he preferred. He didn't look up. Good morning, Chairman Hyunwoo, she said, her voice professionally neutral. Silence. She waited 5 seconds. 10. 20. Then she turned and walked back to her desk, feeling the cold follow her like a ghost. By noon, Dahlia had executed 17 tasks flawlessly. Rescheduled the ministry meeting. Confirmed the Gangnam site inspection. Drafted 3 contract amendments in Korean and English. Ordered lunch from the restaurant he preferred on Mondays. Every instruction had come through messages. 9:23 a.m., Hyun-woo, reschedule the infrastructure meeting to Thursday. 3 p.m. 10:47 a.m., Hyun-woo, I need the Singapore files. My desk. Now. 11:52 a.m., Hyun-woo, cancel my lunch appointment. Not a single spoken word. She told herself it was professional. That she'd done something to warrant distance. That this was just another test in the elaborate game of survival she'd been playing for 3 years. But her hands shook when she typed responses. By 1 p.m., the unease had settled deep in her chest, not professional anxiety, but something far more destabilizing. Emotional distress. She hated that she recognized it. Hated more that it came from his silence. The office felt colder with every passing hour, as if Hyun-woo had somehow drained the warmth from the space simply by refusing to acknowledge her existence beyond transactional necessity. At exactly 2:17 p.m., his office door opened. Dahlia looked up from her computer, her spine automatically straightening. Hyun-woo stood in the doorway, perfectly composed in charcoal Tom Ford. But something was wrong with his eyes, too dark, too focused, burning with something that looked like barely contained chaos. He walked to her desk with measured steps. You had plans yesterday, he said. Not a question. Dahlia's breath caught. Yes. With the man who gave you the watch. Her spine stiffened. That's my private life. The words came out stronger than she felt. Hyun-woo's eyes darkened, a storm breaking. There is no private life when you work for me. The admission hung between them like shattered glass. Too honest. Too close to the truth he'd never allowed himself to speak. You were watching me, Dahlia accused quietly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I protect what belongs to me, he replied. The silence that followed felt explosive. Dahlia stood slowly, meeting his gaze even though everything in her wanted to look away. I don't belong to you. Something dangerous flickered across Hyun-woo's face, a crack in the perfect control, a glimpse of the man beneath the empire. Then why, he asked, stepping closer until she could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker, does the thought of another man touching you make me want to tear this city apart? She sucked in a breath. The confession wasn't romantic. It was obsession wrapped in expensive tailoring. That's not my problem, she said. He froze. For the first time since she'd known him, Hyun-woo looked genuinely unbalanced, like the ground beneath his perfectly polished shoes had shifted. Who is he? He demanded, and there was something raw in his voice now, something bleeding. Ade, she said. My friend. A friend who buys you jewelry. A friend who knows me, she shot back. Who knew me before you? The word struck deeper than she'd intended. She watched something die in his expression, or maybe break loose. Hyun-woo stepped back as if she'd physically pushed him. Get out, he said suddenly, his voice rough. Take the rest of the day. Chairman. Now, Miss Dahlia. She grabbed her bag with trembling hands, refusing to let him see how badly he'd shaken her. But as she walked toward the door, she heard it, the sound of something heavy hitting his desk. She didn't look back. Couldn't. Because if she did, she might see the blood on his hands from the crystal paperweight he'd crushed without even noticing the pain. The rumors started before Dahlia even arrived Tuesday morning. She heard them in the elevator, 2 junior analysts whispering in Korean, assuming she wouldn't understand. Did you see her? With Chairman Hyun-woo last night? At Jaein. The private room. She's beautiful. Like, terrifyingly beautiful. Do you think? The doors opened. Silence dropped like a curtain. Dahlia stepped out, her heels clicking against marble, her expression betraying nothing. But the whispers followed her down the hallway like smoke. A woman. With Hyun-woo. Last night. She told herself it didn't matter. That his personal life was separate from hers, the same separation she demanded he respect. But her hands were cold when she reached her desk. And that's when she saw her. The woman sat in Dahlia's chair with the kind of posture that suggested she'd never questioned her right to occupy space. Mid-20s, flawless in cream Chanel, her dark hair styled in a way that probably required a team. She had the kind of beauty that came with generational wealth, refined, untouchable, soul royalty by blood. She was reviewing documents on Dahlia's computer. Using Dahlia's desk. Existing in Dahlia's space like she'd always been there. Dahlia stopped 3 feet away, her mind struggling to process the image. The woman looked up, her smile polite and devastating. "Oh, you must be Dahlia," she said in flawless English, her voice warm honey over ice. "I'm Mi-suk. I'll be using this desk." A pause, perfectly timed. Chairman Hyun-woo prefers it this way. The words landed like a physical blow. Dahlia's mouth opened. Closed. No sound came out. "Your things have been moved," Mi-suk continued, gesturing vaguely toward the hallway. "Temporary office. 3rd door on the left. HR should have sent you an email." She turned back to the computer, dismissing Dahlia with the ease of someone who'd never had to fight for relevance. Dahlia stood frozen, her professional mask cracking at the edges. Temporary office. Relocated. Replaced. She wanted to demand answers. To march into Hyun-woo's office and break every rule she'd carefully constructed. But her legs carried her down the hallway instead, past curious stares and carefully averted eyes, until she found the 3rd door on the left. The temporary office was small. Windowless. A glorified closet with a desk and a chair and the distinct feeling of exile. Her belongings were stacked in boxes, 3 years of careful organization reduced to cardboard containers. Dahlia closed the door and leaned against it, her breathing shallow. The message was clear. Invisible. Dispensable. Erased. She checked her phone with shaking hands. No email from HR. No explanation from Hyun-woo. Nothing but the text from yesterday's unknown number still glowing on her screen. Rule 3 exists for a reason, Miss Dahlia. By the 3rd day, she could barely breathe. She executed tasks from her exile. Responded to messages. Maintained the facade of professionalism even as something fundamental inside her fractured. Mi-suk moved through the office like she owned it, graceful, confident, perfectly integrated into Hyun-woo's world in ways Dahlia had spent 3 years achieving. And Hyun-woo? He didn't explain. Didn't acknowledge. Didn't even look at Dahlia when she delivered documents to his office, setting them on his desk while Mi-suk sat in the corner reviewing contracts, her presence a silent declaration. On Thursday afternoon, Dahlia watched through her closet office's glass panel as Hyun-woo and Mi-suk left together for a meeting. His hand hovered near the small of her back, not quite touching, but the intention clear. Protective. Possessive. The same gesture he'd never allowed himself with Dahlia. That's when she understood. This wasn't restructuring. This wasn't professional adjustment. This was punishment. Deliberate, calculated, designed to make her feel exactly what he'd felt when he saw that watch on her wrist. Replaced. Erased. Watching someone else occupy the space that was supposed to be yours. Hyun-woo wasn't just controlling the office. He was controlling her worth. And it was working. That night, Dahlia sat in her apartment staring at the silver watch, realizing with terrible clarity, Seoul's most dangerous man hadn't lost control. He'd weaponized it. The Han River at night was a different Seoul. Softer. Quieter. The city lights reflected on black water like scattered diamonds, blurring the hard edges of the skyline into something almost gentle. Dahlia found Ade waiting at their usual spot, a bench near Banpo Bridge where tourists rarely wandered and the sound of water masked conversation. He stood when he saw her, his face breaking into a smile that dimmed the moment he registered her expression. "You're not okay," he said. Not a question. Never a question with Ade. Dahlia laughed, but it came out broken. "You always say that. And I'm always right." He pulled her into a hug without asking permission, the way he'd done 100 times before, in London dorm rooms, at airport arrivals, during the terrible month after her father died. His embrace smelled like cedar soap and home, uncomplicated by danger or surveillance or silent punishments. She let herself breathe. They sat on the bench, the river stretching before them like a dark mirror. Across the water, the Gangnam skyline glittered, wealth and power stacked in glass towers. Somewhere in that forest of steel, Hyun-woo was probably awake, calculating, controlling things she couldn't see. "Tell me," Ade said quietly. Dahlia stared at the water. "It's complicated. It always is with you." His tone was gentle, teasing. "Remember when you thought Korean grammar was complicated? You mastered it in 6 months. Remember when navigating London as an American was complicated? You made it look easy. This is different." "How?" She didn't know how to explain it. How do you tell someone that you're being psychologically dismantled by a man who's never raised his voice? That exile feels like suffocation when it comes wrapped in expensive silence. "Work," she said finally. "It's just work." Ade studied her profile, his dark eyes reading what she wouldn't say. He'd always been like this, emotionally intelligent in ways that felt like superpowers. Where Hyun-woo demanded control, Ade offered understanding. Where Hyun-woo watched and catalogued, Ade simply saw. "The watch," he said. "Did I get you in trouble?" Dahlia's throat tightened. "No. It's not your fault. But something happened after you wore it." She nodded, not trusting her voice. Ade was quiet for a long moment, watching the river. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, harder, protective. "Your boss. Hyun-woo. He doesn't own you, Dahlia." "I know. Do you?" He turned to face her fully. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're terrified of him." "I'm not terrified. You're shaking." She looked down at her hands. He was right. They were trembling in her lap, visible evidence of the fracture she'd been trying to hide. "He's just..." She struggled for words that wouldn't sound insane. "He's particular about boundaries." "Boundaries?" Ade's jaw tightened. "Dahlia, I've seen you handle impossible situations. I watched you rebuild yourself after loss. You don't shake. You don't break." He reached out, gently turning her face toward him. "What is he doing to you?" The question broke something loose. "He replaced me," she whispered. "Put someone else in my position. In my desk. Like I was, disposable. Because of the watch? Because I'm not supposed to have a life outside of him." The words hung in the night air, too honest, too revealing. Ade's expression darkened with understanding. "That's not professional boundaries. That's possession. It's complicated. It's wrong." His voice was fierce now, protective in ways that felt foreign after days of cold silence. "You deserve better than someone who punishes you for existing outside his control." Dahlia felt tears burn behind her eyes. She'd held them back for 3 days, through exile, through humiliation, through watching Mi-suk occupy her space like Dahlia had never mattered. "I don't know how to leave," she admitted. "Then I'll help you." "You don't understand what he's capable of." Ade was quiet, studying her with an intensity that reminded her why they'd stayed friends across continents and years. He saw through performance to truth. "I saw him, you know," Ade said finally. "At the gallery. I was early, waiting outside. I saw him watching you." He paused. "Dahlia, why does he look at you like he's already lost you?" The question pierced straight through her careful defenses. Because she didn't have an answer. Or maybe she did, and it terrified her too much to speak it aloud. The message arrived Friday at 4:47 p.m. "Hyun-woo, my office. Now." 2 words. No explanation. Dahlia stared at her phone screen, her pulse jumping. For 4 days, he'd communicated only through clipped instructions. For 4 days, she'd been invisible. Now. She stood from her exile desk, smoothing her black dress with hands that refused to stay steady. The hallway stretched before her like a corridor in a nightmare, too long, too exposed, lined with glass offices where people pretended not to watch her walk toward the lion's den. Mi-suk wasn't at Dahlia's old desk. The space sat empty, her computer dark. Something twisted in Dahlia's chest. She knocked once on Hyun-woo's door. Enter. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to her, soul sprawling beneath him like a conquered kingdom. The late afternoon sun cut through glass, painting the city in amber and shadow. From this height, the Han River looked like a silver thread, the streets like circuit boards, people reduced to invisible data points. He looked like a man surveying everything he owned. Dahlia stepped inside, closing the door with a soft click that sounded too loud in the silence. You wanted to see me, Chairman Hyunwoo. He didn't turn. The woman at your desk. Mi-suk. Dahlia's spine stiffened. She'd prepared for many conversations. Not this one. What about her? She's my cousin. The words landed like stones in still water. Dahlia blinked. What? Mi-suk, Hyunwoo continued, his voice eerily calm. My father's brother's daughter. She needed temporary work experience for her MBA portfolio. I accommodated her. Silence stretched between them, elastic and dangerous. I put her at your desk, he said, finally turning. His face was perfectly composed, but something burned behind his eyes, something wild and barely contained. Because I wanted you to feel what I felt. Dahlia's anger ignited instantly. You manipulated me. Yes. You humiliated me. Yes. You crossed every professional line. Yes, he snapped, the composure cracking. Because the moment I saw that watch on your wrist, I realized I was already past the point of control. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Dahlia stared at him, her heart hammering against her ribs. You punished me for receiving a gift. I punished myself, he corrected hoarsely, moving away from the window. For months, I'd been trying to convince myself you were just efficient. Just competent. Just necessary. He laughed, a broken sound. Do you think I don't know what that watch means? It's a watch. It's intention, he cut her off. A man choosing something that rests against your pulse. Close to your skin. Something you'll see every time you check the time, think of him every time you glance down. His jaw tightened. That's not casual, Miss Dahlia. That's claim. So you decided to claim me back? Her voice shook with fury. By erasing me? By trying to prove to myself I could function without needing to know where you were. Who you were with. What you were thinking. He stepped closer, and she saw it now, the exhaustion beneath the perfect tailoring, the fracture in his control. It didn't work. That's not my problem. Isn't it? The question was raw. You think I wanted this? You think I don't hate myself for it? For what, exactly? The silence stretched taut. For wanting you, Hyunwoo finally said, the words torn from somewhere deep. I have been trying not to want you for months. Trying to keep you at professional distance. Trying to convince myself that what I felt was just convenience. Appreciation for competence. And then I saw another man's gift on your wrist, and I wanted to burn this entire city down. Dahlia's breath caught. This wasn't love. This was obsession. Possession. Something dark and consuming that had nothing to do with hearts and everything to do with control slipping through perfectly manicured fingers. Ade is not my lover, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. Something shifted in Hyunwoo's expression, hope, or maybe devastation. Then who is he? My family, Dahlia said. The person who knew me before Seoul. Before you. Before I learned to read danger in silence. Hyunwoo closed his eyes briefly, like the relief physically hurt. I was wrong, he said quietly. About everything. Yes, Dahlia agreed. You were. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, Hyunwoo appeared genuinely lost. I don't know how to undo this, he admitted. Dahlia stood there, watching Seoul's most dangerous man confess to powerlessness, and realized, neither did she. The silence that followed wasn't resolution. It was exposure. Two people standing in truth too complicated for easy answers. The office felt too small suddenly, despite its size. Hyunwoo stood 3 feet away, perfectly still, but Dahlia could see the tremor in his control, like watching a dam develop hairline cracks under impossible pressure. Family, he repeated, testing the word. Ade is family. Yes. Not. No, she said firmly. He's not my lover. He's never been my lover. He's the person who held me together when I thought I'd break. He's safety. He's history. She paused. He's everything you're not. The words should have been an insult. Instead, Hyunwoo absorbed them like they were absolution. She watched something collapse inside him, not dramatically, not visibly to anyone who didn't know his tells. But Dahlia had spent 3 years learning to read the invisible. His shoulders dropped half an inch. His jaw unclenched. His fingers, which had been flexed at his sides, slowly relaxed. It looked like a man remembering how to breathe. I thought, he stopped, started again. When I saw how you smiled at your phone. The way you touched the watch like it mattered. I thought that someone else had claimed what you wanted. His eyes met hers, and the honesty in them was devastating. Yes. Dahlia felt something shift in her chest, not forgiveness, but understanding. She'd spent 4 days feeling erased, invisible, replaced. She'd felt the terror of being disposable. He'd felt it first. Standing in that gallery, watching her wear another man's gift. You could have asked me, she said quietly. I don't ask, Miss Dahlia. I control. He smiled bitterly. Or I did. Until you. The confession hung between them like a bridge neither knew how to cross. Dahlia made a decision. She lifted her wrist, her fingers moving to the watch's clasp with steady precision. The silver caught the fading light as she unfastened it, the metal warm from her skin. Hyunwoo watched, frozen. She held the watch in her palm for a moment, this object that had caused 4 days of psychological warfare, this simple piece of silver that had exposed every carefully hidden truth between them. Then she stepped forward and pressed it into his hand. His fingers closed around it instinctively, his eyes questioning. I don't need the watch, Dahlia said softly. I needed you to trust me. Something broke in his expression. Dahlia. 3 years, she interrupted. 3 years of reading your silences. Of anticipating your needs. Of existing in the spaces you allowed me to occupy. Her voice was steady, but her eyes blazed. And you couldn't trust me enough to ask one simple question. I know. You humiliated me instead. I know. You made me feel worthless. I know, he said hoarsely, and there were tears in his voice even if they never reached his eyes. I know, and I will spend however long it takes making it right. He looked down at the watch in his palm, this symbol of his jealousy, then back at her. You're giving this to me? I'm choosing you, she corrected. There's a difference. The words rewired something fundamental between them. Because possession was taking. Choice was offering. And Dahlia had just shifted the entire power dynamic with one simple act. Hyunwoo set the watch carefully on his desk, then turned back to her with an expression she'd never seen before, vulnerable, unguarded, terrified. I don't deserve this, he said. No, she agreed. You don't. But I want it anyway. I know. He stepped closer, hesitant in ways he'd never been. May I? She didn't let him finish. Dahlia closed the distance between them and kissed him. Not gentle. Not careful. But honest, months of restraint and 4 days of anguish colliding into something that felt like relief and devastation at once. Hyunwoo froze for half a second, shocked, before his control shattered completely. His hands found her face, her waist, pulling her closer like she might disappear if he didn't hold on. The kiss deepened, desperate, consuming, 3 years of professional distance burning away in seconds. She tasted his surrender. He tasted her choice. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Hyunwoo rested his forehead against hers. This makes you a target, he warned, his voice rough. I know. Seoul will see you differently. Let them. And he swallowed hard. I'll burn the world if anyone touches you. Dahlia smiled softly, dangerously. Then don't lose control again. He laughed, quiet, broken, real. I already have. And for the first time, he didn't regret it. They stayed in his office long after Seoul's skyline lit up like constellations. Hyunwoo sat in the chair across from his desk, not behind it, not wielding the power of position, while Dahlia occupied the leather sofa, her heels discarded on the floor. The space between them felt different now. Charged, but no longer with tension. With truth. You need to understand what this means, Hyunwoo said finally, breaking the comfortable silence. His voice was serious, stripped of the smooth control she'd grown accustomed to. The moment anyone knows you're more than my secretary, you become leverage. Dahlia met his gaze. I've been leverage for 3 years. Every person who wanted access to you tried going through me first. That was professional leverage. This is different. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I have enemies, Dahlia. Real ones. Men who would use you to hurt me without hesitation. The men in the shadows, she said quietly. The ones I'm not supposed to acknowledge. His jaw tightened. Yes. And the surveillance? The way you always know where I am? Protection, he confirmed. Though I'll admit the line between protection and possession got blurred. Blurred? She raised an eyebrow. You knew about my mother's hospital visit before I told anyone. I monitor threats to people in my orbit. That's a very polite way of saying you invade privacy. He didn't deny it. My world doesn't allow for blindness. Information is survival. Dahlia studied him, this man who'd built an empire on control and surveillance, who wielded power like other people breathed. She should have been terrified. Should have recognized all the red flags her friends back home would have waved frantically. But she'd seen what lived beneath the empire. She'd watched him bleed over a crystal paperweight. She'd felt him tremble when she kissed him. I'm choosing this, she said clearly. Knowing everything it means. Dahlia. I'm not naive, Hyunwoo. I know what you are. I've known for 3 years. She stood, moving to stand before him. I've watched you make people disappear with phone calls. I've cleaned blood from your office after meetings I wasn't supposed to notice. I know exactly what loving you means. The word landed between them, loving, too big, too soon, too honest. Hyunwoo reached out, his hand wrapping around her wrist where the watch used to rest. I can't promise you safety from my world, he said roughly. But I can promise you protection. Not ownership, protection. There's a difference. Show me the difference. I won't control who you see or speak to. I won't punish you for having a life outside this office. His thumb traced circles on her pulse. But I will have men watching you. I will know if you're in danger. And I will eliminate threats before they touch you. That's still control. That's love in a dangerous world, he corrected. The only kind I know how to offer. Dahlia absorbed this, the brutal honesty of a man who'd never learned softness, who equated love with fortification. Okay, she said. He blinked. Okay. I accept your terms. She smiled slightly. With one condition. Name it. No more replacements. No more psychological warfare. You feel jealous? You use your words. Despite everything, he almost smiled. You're negotiating relationship terms like a contract. I learned from the best. Monday morning, Mi-suk was gone. Not dramatically, just absent. Her temporary assignment concluded, her desk cleared as if she'd never existed in that space. Dahlia returned to her position outside Hyunwoo's office, and no one questioned it. The office gossip died quietly, replaced by new rumors, new scandals. But something had shifted in the way Hyunwoo looked at her when investors weren't watching. The way his hand would brush hers when passing documents. The way he'd leave his office door cracked open, an invitation that hadn't existed before. Their relationship became a secret written in glances and careful touches. Seoul's elite saw his secretary. He saw everything else. Late one evening, after everyone had gone home, Dahlia stood at his window watching the city breathe. Hyunwoo came up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. Tell me. Control was the only thing keeping me sane, he admitted. Before you. Knowing where every piece was on the board. Predicting every variable. Managing every outcome. His arms tightened. And then you walked into my office 3 years ago, and slowly, systematically, you became the one variable I couldn't control. Dahlia turned in his arms, facing him. Is that why you hired me? No, he said. I hired you because you were brilliant. I kept you because I was already addicted to the chaos you represented. She smiled against his chest. Chaos. That's romantic. It's honest. And somehow, that was better. The threat came on a Tuesday. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just a photograph slipped under Dahlia's apartment door, her and Hyunwoo leaving his office building, his hand at the small of her back, the gesture unmistakably intimate. No note. No demand. Just proof that someone was watching. She brought it to him immediately, her hands steady despite the ice in her veins. Hyunwoo studied the photograph in silence, his expression unreadable. Then he made 3 phone calls in rapid Korean, his voice cold and efficient, the voice that meant someone's world was about to end. When he finished, he looked at her. This is what I warned you about. I know. I can end this, he said. Track whoever sent it. Make them disappear. His eyes darkened. I can make everyone who even thinks about using you against me regret being born. Dahlia heard the promise beneath the threat, the old Hyunwoo, the one who solved problems through dominance and fear. Or, she prompted. He blinked. Or. There's always an or with you. She moved closer, taking the photograph from his hands. You can eliminate this threat and the next one and the one after that. You can try to control every variable. She set the photo on his desk. Or you can trust that I'm strong enough to stand beside you instead of behind you. Something shifted in his expression. You're asking me to let you be in danger. I'm asking you to let me choose danger, she corrected. There's a difference. He was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with instincts that had kept him alive for years, the need to control, to dominate, to eliminate threats before they materialized. Then he did something that surprised them both. He stepped back. Okay, Hyunwoo said. Okay? I'll handle the immediate threat. But I won't cage you. His voice was rough with the effort of restraint. I won't make you invisible to keep you safe. Dahlia felt something warm bloom in her chest, not gratitude, but recognition. He was choosing her agency over his control. That was love in his language. 3 weeks later, the threat had been neutralized, quietly, efficiently, in ways Dahlia didn't ask about and Hyunwoo didn't offer to explain. But something had fundamentally changed between them. He still had men watching her, still knew her location, still monitored potential dangers with the obsessive precision that defined him. But he'd stopped trying to control her. When Ade visited Seoul again, Hyunwoo invited him to dinner, a meal that was awkward and tense and surprisingly honest. By the end, Ade had grudgingly admitted, he's terrifying, but at least he's honest about it. That's the nicest thing anyone said about me in years, Hyunwoo had replied, almost smiling. Mi-suk sent flowers to Dahlia's desk with a card that read, sorry for the psychological warfare. Family gatherings are going to be interesting. Seoul's elite eventually learned that Hyunwoo's secretary was more than she appeared, and the rumors became facts became accepted truth. Some relationships ended in safety. Theirs ended in chosen danger. 6 months after the gallery, Dahlia stood in Hyunwoo's penthouse overlooking the city they'd both claimed in different ways. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist in a gesture that had become ritual. Do you remember, he said quietly, the first question I asked you? About the watch. I was so controlled then. So certain I could manage what I felt. He turned her to face him. I thought jealousy was weakness. And now? Now I know it was the beginning, Hyunwoo said. The first crack in control that led to everything else. Dahlia smiled, touching his face. Regrets? None. Lies. He laughed softly. Okay. One regret. Tell me. I regret not losing control sooner. She kissed him then, soft, knowing, choosing him again the way she'd chosen him that day in his office. When they broke apart, Hyunwoo rested his forehead against hers. I don't need to ask anymore, he said. Ask what? Who got you that wristwatch? Or the flowers? Or the phone calls at midnight? His voice was steady, certain. Because I know you'll tell me what matters. And what doesn't, I trust you with. Dahlia pulled back slightly, searching his face. That's growth, Chairman Hyunwoo. That's you, he corrected. You made me someone capable of trust. I didn't make you anything. You chose to change. For you. For us. The distinction mattered. Outside, Seoul glittered like shattered glass, beautiful, dangerous, infinite. And inside, two people who'd started with jealousy and control had somehow found something rarer. Love that didn't require ownership. Just choice. Every single day. If you're obsessed with forbidden romance, powerful men who finally learn to surrender, and love stories as dangerous as they are real, hit that subscribe button. We've got more tension-filled tales coming your way. Smash that like button and drop a comment telling me, Team Hyunwoo or Team Ade? And what forbidden romance trope should we explore next?